fellow readers. Today, we are about to embark on a journey together. Okay, this is the first time, don't tell anybody, that I am doing a full book review, a recorded one. And this is, I think, the second time that I have attempted to record this. And it's because I'm doing it in a way that's not true to myself. I was trying to emulate another person, somebody who I enjoy their content. And while their content is really good, I think I need to come at this at a different way. And so this will be a truly deranged retelling, a smorgasbord of my opinion, my experience reading this book, which, can I tell you, was the majority, girl, what are you talking about? I was frustrated for a lot of this book. During the whole book, actually, I was frustrated with Alice, and I was frustrated with Peter until I started to learn about Peter. And then I fell in love with Peter. I love Peter down, but I also have problems with Peter, which, I love him so much, and that's why there's so many problems. But with Alice, I want her to be better. I want more for her. But she wasn't. She had to grow, and that's just how it is. Let me tell you about this book. You need a synopsis, some would say. This book follows Alice Law and Peter Murdoch into their descent into hell, hence the name Catabasis. They're going to hell for their magic professor, their advisor, Professor Grimes, who is psychotic in the worst way possible, okay? He is verbally degrading. He is sometimes physically abusive, and he is just generally an arrogant arse, okay? You just don't want to come in contact with this man, but they work under him, and he is, quote unquote, in Alice's words, the best magician alive. So, for all intents and purposes, Alice needs him. Alice needs his signature on her dissertation so that she can get a good job in magic. And Peter feels the same way. But we come to find out that they have even more selfish reasons for coming into hell to save this man. Okay, because what Alice was planning to do to get Professor Grimes out of hell, that is not a rescue, okay? That could be defined as revenge, torture, some would say. And could you blame her? I wouldn't. No. Well, I don't think that you should get revenge, But some people could say Professor Grimes could have had it coming. I don't know if people would say what she would do would be, what you should do. But, Professor Grimes has sins that he is paying for. Hence, why he is in hell and why they need to go get him. Now that you have an idea of what this book is about, I shall explain the mess that is behind me. But it's not a mess, okay? This is method. This is the seven virtues that this book served to me. The things that I loved about this book. And honestly, I don't think all the things are here. Well, I'll cover them. I'll cover it. So these are the 8 sins this book committed against my sanity. Okay? This book took me places of deep frustration that I've never been to before. And now we're going to talk about it. And I don't know where to start. Man, honestly, I don't think it matters. So I'm just going to wave my little wand around and just pick one. Ooh, what was that one? Alice being a grade A crimes defender. Oh boy. No, dear. Alice Law will be the first person in your face telling you, well, he's the best magician in the world. He deserves it. He's earned his prickle. Well, he's just doing it for my good. Literally the entire book when she was defending Professor Grimes. And I realize it's because she's brainwashed. I realize it's because he's convinced her. It's because she genuinely thinks that he is the best thing since sliced bread, that he can do no wrong. Oh my gosh. Let me read this for you. Let's get you an example. You need to know what I'm talking about. So, for context, they are in the Court of Pride, which is a library. The shades are milling around trying to define the good so that they can pass on to the next court, Desire. A shade is showing them around, telling them the type of things that people have done to land themselves in pride. Call himself a communist, but hasn't read Das Capital. Recites pi to show off. Had more of a comment than a question. Wouldn't accept papers written in the first person. Turned his exam papers over very loudly. Made his wife call him doctor, but he's a medievalist. Still asks people what they got on their A-levels. At this point, Alice had made up her mind. Professor Grimes could not have been sentenced to pride. She felt indignant, actually, at the thought of this gossipy little man lumping Grimes in with these posers and imposters. Yes, Professor Grimes was occasionally very rude. Yes, the whole Royal Academy called him arrogant behind his back. Yes, he habitually reduced undergraduates to tears, but weren't all great thinkers of their generation a little prickly? And hadn't he earned his prickle? She recalled that Aristotle distinguished between proper and improper pride. The worthy man could justly boast of his accomplishments, so long as he had actually done them. Professor Grimes could only be charged with behaving as befit his station, which was lofty. And Alice really did not think this was as morally egregious as calling oneself a Marxist. It speaks for itself, Like, I don't have to tell you. She tells you everything that you need to know. Let me show you something else. Now they have entered Desire. Desire is a building with many, many rooms, with many, many shades who are just continuously engaging in their obsession. From book sniffing to, watching TV. All obsessions, all desires, just going on loop in this building until people realize what they're doing and leave. They're in Desire. They're looking around. Alice is like, there's no fucking way. Gosh, said Peter. It just keeps going on. It was getting harder to keep walking, to keep peeking in, and harder to breathe. And the fluorescent hum and mold and damp were so much that finally Alice could not take it anymore. He's not in here, she halted. Let's go back out, walk around. I thought you wanted to check every court, said Peter. Well, we've checked. We've only been here an hour. That's enough to know he's not in here. You said that about pride, too. Well, it's true, Alice sniffed. He's not here. He's better than this. How do you know that? Because it's all so pathetic. Her head felt oddly light. She could understand why her chest was constricting, why it felt so hard to breathe. It's base, disgusting. He won't be here. Whatever he's done, it's above that. I don't think so. Peter's voice was oddly cold then. I think there's every chance he's here. That's ridiculous. You think so highly of him. It's not a compliment. Alice folded her arms. Lust is a sin of incontinence. It's a weakness of will. Just look around us. And whatever Grimes was, he was not weak of will. Jesus. There again, that cold tone. It baffled her. She had never seen him like this, and she couldn't understand why he was so angry. Sing his praises some more, why don't you? I'm just scared of wasting time, she said. That's all I'm saying. We've seen enough. This isn't like him, and I'm tired of walking through this stupid... Peter threw his hands up. Shut up, it said, the universal gesture. And Alice was about to voice her indignation when Peter pointed out the door down the hall. What he sees is not important. What's important is that Grimes defending. I'm over it. Peter's over it. We're all over it. And she doesn't stop. Like, there's so many examples. Actually, she grows, but she doesn't stop defending him. She still thinks, for a long while in this book, she thinks that Professor Grimes was just doing what was best for her. And that makes you want to shove your head into a door and close it. Next, let's talk about something good. Why don't we? This one. The setting. Yes, hell. The way that R.F. Kuang writes. And this also has to do with a different thing, the writing. The way that she writes and the way that hell is described is funky. It's fresh. It's interesting. It paints a very particular picture about you know, a place that is undesirable, to say the absolute least. And the setting of hell for this book aids in the message of what makes life worth living. And being in a place like hell after being on earth is hellish. For lack of better words, it's horrible. And it makes you remember all of the good little things that we have up among where the people live, where the sun shines and the water doesn't erase your memories, where people ride bikes and where birds chirp. Hell is a dead thing, okay? Hell, as described in this book, is mostly desert. Other than like the varying buildings, like Pride the Library, Desire, the den of carnal pleasures, Greed, the desert, Wrath, more desert, and you know what? The rest are actually mostly desert. Other than the 8th court of hell, which is the Citadel, which is a city where shades go when they've done the most egregious things, the worst possible things that you can do. You get sent to the Citadel and you are forced to write a dissertation, a confession of the things that you did wrong. Maybe it's an apology letter. Nobody really knows. Nobody's passed in years. So, you know, I don't even really know. But very, very vast city. And it's a very, very sad place. And let's talk about it, actually. When she goes to the Citadel, she comes across shades who have been there for millennia, okay? Shades who have lost hope, shades who are still hoping, shades who are working to help other shades make profit, shades who feel like they figured it all out, shades who have given up and decided to just sit and wail like as a tree because they can remorph themselves into different things, which is very cool. We have a map of hell that I wanted to show you. The black that's surrounding the edges is called the leaf. It washes away people's memories. Did I already tell you that? I'm not sure. But it's pretty radical, honestly. You know, it serves a function. When they venture into Wrath, they enter a kind of quicksand area, but it's not quicksand so much as it's shades and mud kind of mixed together, where they drown when the shades pull them under. But they also there's no also. It's a sea of shades pulling them down. It's freaking terrifying to even imagine. I mean, what better place for a little journey, for an adventure. I thought it was fun, and it's a reason that I had fun. Anyways, we're gonna move on now. This one. It's in third person. And not to say that third person is bad, okay? Most of the time, I had a good time when I was reading the book. There's nothing wrong inherently with third person. It's just in this book specifically, the way it's just about Alice, okay? We're focused mostly on Alice's story, her journey, her memories, her perspective. And we get Peter's perspective just a wee bit, and it hurts me. My enjoyment would have gone up so much had we just had Peter's point of view. We never get explanations for the things that Peter says because they don't talk about it. That's another thing. They have constipated communication. They don't talk about all the things that they should, and it's eating me up inside. Let me give you an example. They have just finished the Herculean task of climbing a wall. It was a really big wall, and Peter is afraid of heights. And now they're talking at the bottom of this wall. It's strange, you know? Peter tilted his head back, eyes half lidded, hearing you talk about him. Who? The professor? Yeah, said Peter. I thought you didn't like him all that much. Alice prickled. What's that supposed to mean? Well, nothing in particular. I just thought, I don't know. You always seemed a bit on edge around him. Recently, I mean. He's the greatest magician alive. You'd be stupid not to be on edge. Peter considered this, then nodded. I didn't mean to imply that your relationship was bad. I just thought you weren't too fond of each other, I mean. Just in the last term, I suppose it wasn't hard to notice. He trailed off. Professor Grimes is my best shot at getting a job. No, of course, Peter said quickly. I mean, same here. Oh, please. What's that mean? You're Peter Murdoch. Aren't they falling all over themselves to hire you? Peter hesitated. His mouth opened slightly. Something clearly was on the tip of his tongue, but he wouldn't say it. At least not to her. And now, I won't even know. To talk about this next grievance with the third person point of view, we must also talk about this. Peter's ghost cosplay. Okay? Now, to understand this, I must tell you that Peter and Alice used to be the cutest friends you've ever seen in your life. Okay? They were a match made in heaven. They were advisee siblings. And so, here and again, they were assigned the same projects. When they were assigned these same projects, they would work together. And they would, let me paint a picture for you. She worried that Peter was going to think she was stupid. Maybe that he would condescend her. She needn't have worried. Difficulty had a way of forging fast friendships. There was no time for interpersonal awkwardness when there was so much to do. How pleasant was the exhaustion of those first days. Every day at 5, Alice and Peter met in Professor Grimes' basement laboratory, loaded down with stacks of manuscripts, hands dusty with chalk. Those nights they worked frantically for hours and hours until they couldn't see straight. Those nights they spent on the floor of the lab, laughing at their own mistakes, eating chips and curry from the halal carts, and sometimes, if they felt like treating themselves, chicken tikka masala from the Indian place up north of the bridge. This was the best life had to offer. Chalk smears on their faces, turmeric-stained fingerprints on graph paper. Complete happiness was some form of study, said Aristotle. And they were so happy, covering entire blackboards with chalk in an inspired frenzy, then erasing the whole thing to start over again, suppressing their giggles, putting on a straight face every time they heard Professor Grimes' footsteps down the stairs. It was in the midnight hours, when the mind fractured and things stopped making sense, and the boundaries of the possible became fluid, that they did their best work. And in these hours, Alice experienced for the first time what she thought it might be like to fall in love. She was not new to the language of courtship. There were boyfriends in high school, boyfriends in college, nervous young men in button-downs smelling of aftershave who triapsed one after another in a forgettable procession of silent films, fumbling hands. Dimly, she understood this kind of socializing turned into going steady, into marriage. She just couldn't understand how, when it all felt an exercise in concealing your distaste. Peter did not belong to this genre. This was an entirely different type of feeling, and Alice could not co-sign what they had to the trash heap of romance. This was love, a love she had never known. At last, she thought, this is the real thing, this gradual unfolding of another soul, charting one course into privileged inner territory, making discoveries of which you felt were the first. Alice loved her work for just this reason, so why wouldn't she fall in love with people too? She learned that Peter liked to hum Mendelssohn as he worked, but would blush and stop if she started humming along. She learned that Peter loved lentils, but hated mashed potatoes and bananas because they had a quality he found deceptively mushy. She learned that at approximately 2 a.m, Peter transitioned into what they called his manic state, which was when his hair fluffed up and his eyes went wide and started windmilling. And he got so excited about everything that they were working on that he was unable to communicate with anything more than a frenzied ah. And if falling in love was discovery, was letting yourself be discovered the equivalent of being loved? For it tickled Alice to hear Peter make observations about her, to announce facts she'd never noticed about herself. Did she know, for instance, that she flopped her hands like a jellyfish whenever she disagreed with an argument? Did she know that she always ended up with the same diagonal streak across her forehead left by pushing her hair back with the same chalky fingers? Peter determined that when Alice got sleepy, she lied. Not in a malicious way, but in an absurd way. Words just streamed from her half-conscious mind in no sensible order. He was so amused by Alice's unconscious lying that for weeks he recorded the silliest things she said. Also, he could announce at the end of the month, I have concluded that your lying sleeping self has a single motive, and it is to continue sleeping for long as possible. You will answer in any way that convinces your interlocutor to leave you alone. For instance, see here, my transcript from Wednesday. I ask you if you are an eggplant, and you agree you are an eggplant, but that I shouldn't worry and that everything is fine. In the past month, I've heard you agree that you are the princess of Belgravia, that your toes are really baby hamsters, and that over the holidays you will join me skiing on the sun. You are incorrigible law. Your unconscious ID is fiercely protective of being left alone. There were no thoughts they could not share. They reached that rare state of comfort with another person in which speaking out loud was just the same as thinking in your head. Nothing filtered, nothing hidden. Often, instead of going home to sleep, they would stay up until the latest hours of the morning talking. They argued over the Monty Hall problem. Peter thought it obvious. You should switch. Alice refused to be convinced. They argued over whether numbers had colors and personalities. Peter insisted they did. 3 was blue, 5 was red, 2 was yellow, and 4 was orange. 8 was a ponderous bore, and 9 was a voluptuous seductress. And what color? Oh, obviously burgundy. 9 was wine. Alice thought he was making this up for attention. They argued over whether on the question of language's relationship to reality. Wittgenstein and Lacan were climbing the same mountain from different sides. Possibly, they concluded, but neither of them could comprehend Lacan well enough to say for certain. Peter was the best kind of interlocutor. Generous, open-minded, inquisitive. He thought every new discipline was fascinating, and he asked her questions about her own field she'd never considered before. What's Jacobson say about language? He would ask. What's metonymy? What's metaphor? What does it mean for the unconscious to be structured like a language? What is the language? When they spoke, he would stare, unblinking at her face in a manner that every now and then made her stutter and drop what she was holding. It was hard for her to receive Peter's attention. She had wondered for so long what it would take to get it, and now, although she had it in spades, it paralyzed her. He taught her that maths could be fun, sometimes, so long as you were solving paradoxes about potatoes. Suppose you have 100 kilos of potatoes. They are 99% water. Suppose overnight they dry, so they are now only 98% water. How many kilos of potatoes do you have? Only 50. 50? Yes, 50. Down from 100. But you've only lost 1% of water. But how could this be? It's simple arithmetic, he said. But Alice did not believe. Alice, in turn, taught him about Chinese acrostic poems, written so as to be intelligible no matter which direction you read them in. She taught him about intricacies of Chinese grammar, or really how there was none, and how in Chinese the conceptual metaphors for time and space were the opposite of in English. The Chinese believe you can see the past, but not the future, she explained. Therefore, you can only walk backward into the future. And Peter, fascinated, declared he was going to learn Chinese so he could understand her better, until a brief exercise with tones and tone deafness disabused him of the hope it would be so easy. Back then, they even developed their own shorthand language, an idiotic combination of symbolic logic, which was just funny to utter out loud, and French, which only Alice spoke, and which Peter thought sounded funny. There was a lot of honking in lieu of actual French. This language was not at all efficient, but it amused them. It made them feel even more that they existed on a mental plane removed from everyone else, that soon they would disappear into their own symbolic order and never be understood by anyone else ever again but each other. Often they descended into incoherent laughter. Oh, how she loved his laugh. At a certain point past midnight, when their minds were addled, they would start to giggle at everything. But every now and then, Alice said something so absurd it made Peter erupt into helpless, full-body laughter. It lurched through him, syncopated his breath, made his arms flail, elbows up for his chest, like if he didn't try to hold himself together, that laughter would break him into a million pieces. When Peter laughed, it felt like the entire warmth of the sun was turned on her, because she had done it. She had uttered those words that so surprised her and delighted him that he couldn't even breathe. There was a time when she felt all she ever wanted to do was make Peter Murdoch laugh. Just as often, they fell into a happy silence as they worked. They could go for hours without speaking. They developed such a comfortable natural rhythm around each other. All Alice needed for company was the confident scribble of Peter's chalk beside her. She was not alone. She was safe. There was at least a single other soul in this universe who vibrated at her same frequency. And really, that was the happiest Alice had ever felt. How wonderful, truly, to have a friend whose silence you adored. Anyhow, all this happened before the period when Alice remembered everything, so it was a mere fog to her now. Interject. I'm not sure if I told you, but Alice has a tattoo given to her by her psycho-advisor that makes her able to remember everything. And it is hell for her. The brain needs to forget, and Alice is a record of that. I'm going to continue now. And even if she could remember, she suspected it would feel absurdly distant no matter what, like a life lived by two entirely different people, younger, happier, more innocent people. They were not the same people, distant cousins maybe, passing resemblance. How quickly things could change. The term ended, the project concluded. Professor Grimes gave his presentation in Burgess to a standing ovation, and Alice and Peter no longer had any reason to grind midnights at the lab. And instantly, Peter pulled away. It took Alice far too long to get the hint. Fool that she was, she thought their friendship extended outside the lab. That whatever happened across all those midnight hours would endure. She thought he'd felt it too. They had no classes together, but she invented reasons to come across him. She started lingering in the graduate students' lounge just in case he came in for a coffee. Weeknights, she would swing by the halal cart, hoping she would find him ordering his usual chips and curry. She had no particular goal in mind, nothing so concrete as a dinner date, nothing so bold. She had not thought that far. The question did not even take form. She only wanted to hear him laugh. But he was never there. She could not blame him for this. Their teaching schedules did not overlap. They shared no lab assignments, nor were they taking any classes together. There was no reason they ought to spend time together except that she had enjoyed it and wanted to do it more. But he had not promised her his time. He did not owe her anything. He was busy, they all were, and increasingly so as their responsibilities doubled. She couldn't begrudge him that. But even this did not account for the way he behaved when their paths did cross. When they walked past one another in the hallway, one leaving Grimes' office, one about to enter, he only nodded. When they attended the same department functions, they exchanged nothing but bland pleasantries. Fine, yeah, same old, grinding away. Great, yeah, good to see you, take care. She cracked jokes, references meant only for him, but he did not laugh, or did not hear. On many occasions, she lingered at doorways, hoping to walk out with him, but he walked past without seeing her. It was so humiliating the way she lingered, hoping for his attention, like a dog that didn't know that it had been abandoned, that kept on coming back. He was not rude to her. In fact, he was perfectly polite, wearing that classic Murdoch smile. He gave her the same kind attentiveness that he would to any stranger. But this hurt, for she had thought they were anything but. And when at last the fact of the matter sank in that Peter did not wish to see her and did not hold her in special regard, she still could not wrap her mind around it. She could not understand how you could open your mind to someone so completely for so long and then slam it shut again. She wanted to ask him what had happened, but could not formulate the question in a way that wasn't childish. Why don't you like me anymore? Why don't you want to be my friend? Questions for the playground. Pathetic utterances. She would not say them. She would not confirm for him that she was too dull for his attention. That following term, she cycled through every emotion she might have felt toward Peter. Disappointment, anger, resentment, longing, a whole slew of one-sided angst. But above all, she was confused. All the walls were up. She had been thrown out in the cold. An abyss lay between them, and she did not know how she had caused this. Then she went to Venice. Then several things happened in Venice, and Alice began to feel everything slipping away from her. That was the start. She had since realized the moment she learned that when it came to Professor Grimes, she really had no ability to say no. And then she came back, and everything went wrong. And for the last year, Alice had been unable to pass Peter in the hallway without dropping her gaze. There was a time when everything was going sideways that Alice tried to fix things. Let the record display she did not give up so easily on love, that she actually did try to sit down, hammer it all out, and understand what was going on. Peter was still avoiding her, so she slipped a note into his pidge instead. She put it right on top of his stack of correspondence, a place where he could not fail to see. It had been a while, she wrote. She was wondering how he was. She wanted to sit down together, have a cup of tea, talk. He saw the note. She knew he did because the next morning when she checked, the note was gone. Peter knew she had tried. He simply never responded. If she'd had her perfect memory back then, she could pick through their interactions, all those late nights, all those smiles, for clues, if not the sheer comfort of reminiscence. But all she had now was icy nods in the hallway, curt greetings, and the flop of his coat, the back of his head as he hurried out the door, and then the gossip, the innuendos, the laughter, footsteps disappearing down the hall. That summer, the philosopher Derek Parif published the very controversial Reasons and Persons, and for a while, it was all anyone at Cambridge or Oxford would talk about. Alice read it with great interest. In fact, it helped her sort through much of her confusion. Reasons and Persons argues for a reductionist account of personal identity. That is to say, no special essence of personhood that remains stable across one's lifetime. Using a number of thought experiments involving brain transplants, brain divisions, and teletransportation, Parfit argued that the qualities which we think define essential personhood, psychological connectedness, for instance, do not actually ground any deeper fact. We might share the same cells, bodily continuity, and memories as previous iterations of ourselves, but that is all. There is no further contact of the matter, no essential us hovering like a specter. We bear the same relationship to the version of ourselves from 10 years ago as we might to a sibling. Now, Alice did not understand much about moral philosophy, and she was inclined to be skeptical that some thought experiments about teletransportation could disprove the idea of an immortal soul, but she did find this perspective liberating. It helped her understand that she had never really known Peter, and he had never really known her. She knew only a version of him at a brief moment in time, but without those hazy recollections, without the historical fact that she had once giggled helplessly with her head lolling on Peter's shoulder, she had no significant relationship to the Alice Law who was falling in love with Peter Murdoch at all. And if you could constantly reinvent yourself, cut away the parts of you that ashamed or hurt you, then how could you ever come to really know someone else? Were people all just living paradoxes, keeping up an illusion just long enough to survive the contact with others? Were people then all a series of lies in the end? And if that was true, then what difference did it make what history you had, what love you shared? That staircase was gone, the planks had reassembled, and the soul you had come to know was a newly crafted fiction. And so perhaps it was entirely possible, common even, for you to look into the eyes of someone you'd been falling in love with, someone you had spent every waking moment with, whose breathing sounded as familiar as your own, and fail to recognize them at all. Now, a ghost. Why? Why did he turn into a ghost? Why did he just stop talking to her? Nobody freaking knows. Nobody knows because the story's in third person and they don't talk about it. Which brings me to another point. Look at it. If you can't read it, it says constipated communication. They have a problem, and I'm not happy about it. Because what do you mean? What do you mean? You heard me, right? Like, y'all were listening. Some of y'all read the book. They were falling in love. What do you call that other than falling in love? It's the cutest, most romantic shit I've read in a while, okay? And then he just goes ghost. Starts acting like they're strangers. And for what? For why? Oh my gosh. Really breaks my heart. And this horrible situation brings me to another point of the story that caused me great distress. The Weaver girl. The Weaver girl forcing Alice's hand. Okay, listen. So, while I was telling you that story, this was happening in Alice's head. She's dealing with all of this in her head. Okay, wait. Let me introduce you to the Weaver girl. The Weaver girl is a goddess from above who she fell in love with a human and they were like doomed lovers. They could only see each other like once a year. And now she comes down to hell and kidnaps people who aren't actually in love. Okay? If you want the full story, you're definitely going to have to read the book or look her up because I don't have it for you right now. But that is all you need to know. Alice and Peter come across this woman and she's like, okay, I'll give you a choice. Red apple. You two can go together in hell and I'll build you a bridge and it'll be great. And green apple, you alone can go on to hell and your partner will stay with me. Right, and they're supposed to be pretending to be a couple because the Weaver Girl works with couples. And so they're separated. Alice is looking between green and red, green and red, green and red. And she's like, okay, what's Peter gonna choose? Even though, guys, it's Peter's idea to pretend to be couples. He's like, let's just pretend that we're in love and she'll help us. We'll get to Professor Grimes quick, fast, and in a hurry. Alice is looking between, but is he really gonna pick it? I thought I knew Peter, but then he started acting weird. So, like, do we even really know? And then, you don't know this, but Alice was looking at Peter's notes, okay? Close to the beginning of the book when they started this journey, she was taking a peek-see at his notes. She saw that he had a equation for an exchange of souls to get Professor Grimes out of hell. And right under it, it was like, if Alice, question mark, question mark, question mark. And so she's thinking, he's going to trade my soul for Professor Grimes. And she's like, holy moly. And she's thinking, that's something Peter would do. Absolutely. Why wouldn't it be? And so she's thinking about all these things, how he switched up, how her name is in his notes. And then, boom. She, like, blacks out. And then she looks up. She got the green apple in her hand. And the Weaver Girl's all like, oh, honey, I know what you meant.
Huh?
So, one second. Because let me read this for you. Stop, Alice managed. Don't worry, dear. I know what you meant. But that's not what you made your choice. And then she starts wrapping Peter up in silk. I know what you meant. Who's to say Alice even picked up the apple? I'm thinking she didn't. I'm thinking the Weaver Girl put it in her hand. And that just causes a whole bucket of trouble. Like, Peter feels so betrayed. And you know what? It fell, but their consummated communication strikes a freaking again. Okay. But we're going to wait. We're going to get there. Next, we get to uncover something that I really want to talk about. Next, we get to uncover our savior, okay? Because they are in a bind at this moment. Weaver Girl and then some bone dogs come down, a wave of them, like a humongous army of bone dogs that are not friendly, okay? They're trying to eat you and take you back to their masters, the Kripkes. Do you know about the Kripkes? Did I tell you about the Kripkes? They're goofy. We're going to talk about them later. But right now, we're going to talk about the greatest side character of this book. I'm going to start calling it the Gestapo. Yes, the Gestapo of this book. Elspeth. Elspeth comes around. She comes off her boat. It's called the Naraf. And she starts whipping dog ass, okay? Saves Peter and Alice. Get on! And they're on the boat with Elspeth. Let's introduce Elspeth. Elspeth is a shade who has been in hell for some years now. She has not been trying to reincarnate or go through the courts. She has been just doing a little dancey dance with the Kripkes. She's been just surviving, chilling, maxed out, cooling. She was a Professor Grimes student. And she is the only one who talks some god-darn sense. Okay, especially when it comes to Grimes. And that's why I love her. That and because she's chill. She's cool, okay? And she's super nice to Alice, even though Alice doesn't really like her niceties. Like, Elspeth tries to relate to Alice because they're low-key similar. But Alice not going for it. She like, we're not the same. You think magic is pointless, but I know I'm different. I know it's not. I'm special. Deadass, guys, deadass. So, Elspeth is talking to Alice. She's telling her why she killed herself. She is telling Alice all about how the system is flawed and it's stupid, and she couldn't find a reason to keep participating in it. But she also couldn't find a reason else to live because she was a magician and the only thing that mattered to her was magic. And so she was left with little options, apparently. And Professor Grimes was like the whipped cream on top of her latte, treating her like a dog, as he treated most of his peers. And she's talking shit, okay? She's like, he's not even that good of a magician, and he's just some hack like the rest of them. And here comes Alice, Professor Grimes, defender of the century. Oh, he's doing such great research, genius takes time, yada yada yada, mighty mighty my. That is not the only reason that I love Elspeth. I love Elspeth because she can see. She's a smart, beautiful woman, and she helps Alice see some very important things towards the end of this book. Alice and Peter tried to trick her. They tried to trap her in a liar paradox, which was insulting to her intelligence. Like, for the most part, like, she was very upset about that. And she kicked them off her boat. A whole slew of things happen. Alice comes back, and Elspeth is ready to forgive. Elspeth is like, I'm sorry, I really shouldn't have kicked you off. And Alice is like, no, we betrayed you. Like, I'd be upset too. Let me read this for you. I just couldn't understand it, says Elspeth. Why did you ever want to go back for him? Right. He's simply monstrous. Elspeth's hand moved up and down in a staccato as if she were lecturing to an undergraduate. Basic principles. You must know this. He leeches the life from you. So when you said the name Grimes, I don't know, something just came over me. And then I couldn't even think straight. Please don't apologize, said Alice. It's my fault. You took us in, you sheltered us, and she swallowed. I can't justify it. We knew what we wanted and how to get it, and everything else was, I don't know, just collateral. I wasn't thinking about you at all. All I could think was, what would he do? How I could make him proud. Well, Elspeth sniffed. He has that effect. They sat a moment in silence. Once again, they regarded one another. Two bruised girls with too much in common. But this time, there was no measuring up, no guesswork, only a tired recognition. I know how you got here. I know what it took. It's all so stupid. Alice rubbed her palm against her temple. I just can't figure out why. I mean, he has everything, And I don't know what he needs or if he's hurting. Stop trying to justify him. I wasn't. You were. Listen, Alice. I've been there. I've spent years trying to justify him. Everything you just said. I've been down that road. I've considered it all. So please trust me when I tell you there's nothing more to it. Some people just are that cruel. There is no design. They're not giants. They don't do it for a reason. They just like it. And the rest of us just have to survive them. I know that, Alice said tiredly. I only mean we weren't special for it. We weren't worthy of it or handpicked for it or anything like that. Can't you understand? Elspeth's hand moved again in that lecturing staccato. Harsher this time. He did not care. It was completely random. We were just there. But can't you see, said Alice, why I choose to believe anything different? Oh, love. Elspeth placed her hands over Alice. You don't have to believe anything about him at all. Alice supposed this was reasonable. The stakes of this debate were suddenly opaque to her. Whether Grimes had ever cared, whether she deserved it at all. Suddenly, she couldn't see why these propositions ever mattered to her in the first place. The name Jacob Grimes hung empty in her head, with a symbol with no referent. No flood of memory attended the call. Now, this is where I should tell you that she gets in a bit of a tizzy when she's dancing with the crib case. and she falls into the leaf. She's soaked in the leaf. Girl, the tattoo starts to fizzle off. The tattoo just disappears. And apparently, with it, her memories of Grimes. And can I get a hallelujah? Can I get a ashe? Can I get a hooray? Please. It's incredible. It's amazing. And Elspeth, girl, I love you. Elspeth, thank you. Elspeth, you are the greatest side character of this book by far. Live, laugh, love, Elspeth. Live, laugh, love, Peter. I still love Peter. And I'm just upset with him, okay? Peter's a great character, I think. I want to think that he's a great character. But honestly, I don't know how much I can even believe myself after his disappearing trick. Like, we don't know. We don't know why that ever happened. It's eating me up inside. It's sick and it's twisted. It's sick and it's twisted. Well, nowhere to go but up, huh? Let's see. Here. Peter's third act disappearing trick. Guys. It sounds exactly as it says. Peter goes poof. Let me tell you what happens. So, they get kicked off of Elspeth's boat. They're walking, and Peter's like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go because you wanted me to die. That's cool. You were gonna give me up to the Weaver girl. I don't want to continue this with you. She's like, yeah, but I only did that because I was confused and everything. My brain was all muddled up, and you had my name in your notebook. You were gonna exchange me, and Peter's all like, what? Why would you think I would do that? Because how else could I interpret that? And he's like, I don't have to justify myself to you. If you think that I'm the kind of person who would trade you like you're nothing, then maybe you're better off going through hell alone. Ah! Because what is that? That's not communication. He could literally have just told her, oh no, I wasn't going to trade you. I was going to trade me. Because, spoiler alert, he was going to trade himself for Professor Grimes, which is a crime in of itself. Because what do you mean? For that man, are we serious? I don't even want to talk about it. But constipated communication. But then trouble strikes. Trouble strikes because they end up falling through the ground. Okay, it's not really ground. It's like a watery, swamp-like situation. And it's shades. A sea of shades. Scrambling up, trying to get from underneath each other, pulling each other down and up. And they grabbed Alice's legs. And they grabbed Peter too. They're both underneath the water. I think it's water and shades. I don't know what it is. I think it's like sand and it's like mud, like quicksand type. But not quicksand. It's like mud and shades. Absolutely horrifying to picture. Alice and Peter, they help each other out of the bog and they get to walk in because now they only have one rucksack. And Peter's all like, we have to turn back. We have to go. We have to. There's no point in continuing. Like, we don't have my rucksack. And we don't even really have a way to save Professor Grimes. What are we doing here? I'd rather be alive and be laughed at than die here. Alice is like, no, let's just go as far as Tyranny. He should be there. And if it's the three of us, we will find a way out. Awesome plan, Alice. Spectacular. They go off walking. They see a couple boulders, and then boom, they fall into a hole. It's an Escher trap. And they're stuck, okay? It's very proficient magic. They can't find the pentagram. They're sitting at the bottom of this hole, like starving to death. And this is a very cute scene, actually. They do a lot of confessing. Alice tells him, oh yeah, Grimes sexually assaulted me and that's why we weren't cool. And, you know, it's kind of my fault that he's dead because I didn't close the circle. But then Peter's like, no, it's my fault because, no, he was like, oh, I was going to trade myself for Grimes, not you, because I killed him because I didn't finish writing the circle in the notes because Professor Grimes did some grimy shit, as he does. Grimes stole Peter's work and then told Peter to do the proofreads for the pentagrams for the study. And Peter forgot, didn't close the circle. He was pretty lazy with it. And then Professor went boom. You know, since we're here, we're going to talk about one of the things that I love about this book, which you already know what it is. Peter. It's Peter. He's my favorite character. We all know this. It's because he's funky and fun. He's cute. He's intelligent. Like, I like his disposition, and I just want better from him. I want better from him, and I want better for him. And this scene right here, Peter just cannot let her die. Peter finds a way. Oh, wait. I guess I should tell you a little bit about Peter's story. Peter is a young white boy who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and a piece of chalk in his hand. He has academic parents, and he is a boy genius, okay? And he moves around in life with the privilege befit his station, okay? And he uses it, as you would expect, to have fun, be only acquaintances with people, excel in his field, and be flaky. Flaky as hell. But he's flaky as hell because he has Crohn's disease. He throws up everything. Throws up or shits. I can't remember. But anything that goes down comes right back out. And it's actual hell. It's horrible tummy aches. And those are the main reasons why Peter flakes on everybody. And why he doesn't tell anybody. Because once he had a birthday party and a little girl was like, the prettiest girl at the party was all like, it's so good that you had us over. I'm so happy. Company is good for invalids. And that stuck with him. That stuck deep. Never again shall I be referred to as invalid. And so he keeps it a big old secret. The only person he knew was Professor Grimes. And then Grimes did some grimy shit. Nasty man. Nasty, nasty man. Well, anyway, that's background on Peter. We're talking about how Peter could not let Alice die in that trap. Peter, his logician brain, he figured out a paradox that allowed Alice to be able to be lifted out. But he knew the paradox too well. So he was talking about we both can't go, so you need to go. And I was like, fuck no. You die, I die. I get out, you get out, no other area. Peter's like, no, I can't let you die. I can't, I won't. It's the only logical solution. If you can leave, you're gonna leave. Why would I make you die with me? No, that's silly. I know I can get this to work on you. Alice fights him with her everything, but apparently Peter's just too darn strong. Even though this whole time we've been depicting Peter as a tall, lanky man. It's not to say that lanky men aren't strong. You know, I guess he's stronger than Alice. And so it doesn't work. Alice is like, I hate you. You're such a freaking logician. Ugh. And then she doesn't even say how she actually feels. Let me pull it up. How about that? What's worse is we find out about how much Peter loved Alice. Peter, let me read this for you. Professor Grimes was exacting and formidable, just as Peter had hoped. Under his tutelage, Peter had felt his mind being honed. A knife scraped sharp against the whetstone. And there was Alice Law. How many nights during that first year did he bike home long after midnight, giddy with the memory of her laughter? Peter had never known anyone like her. Prickly, stubborn, ridiculous Alice. She had an underdog's persistence, an artist's creativity, and best of all, she thought so differently from everyone he trained with at Oxford. Perhaps it was the American influence. Or perhaps it was Alice's off-kilter sensibilities. But something about her mind was, well, rhythmatic was the best way he could describe it. She didn't think in straight lines. She was always zigzagging outward. She was always wondering how unrelated disciplines might speak to one another, or dredging up random shit from archives no one had ever heard of. Can you imagine a world without memory? She asked. Can we form meaningful relationships if we have the memories of goldfish? Does your pet know that they will one day die? Does teleportation equal death? Now suppose you do think teleportation is death. If you woke up and your spouse professed they had been teleported from one side of the bed to the other, would you mourn them? Never before had he met a thinker whose thoughts spiraled out into places he could not easily follow. He so loved watching her think out loud, hearing her fragmented thoughts spin into complete arguments, seeing her eyes dart around a point in space he could not see. It wasn't just that she was brilliant. Everyone around him was brilliant. Brilliance was boring. Alice was a challenge. Alice kept him on his toes. Watch out for that one, Professor Grimes told him over tea at the faculty club. She'll either flame out early or she'll win a Nobel. Yes, Peter did a lot of watching Alice. At night, he dreamed of a bird-like silhouette stretching on tiptoes before a chalkboard, head tilted, considering. It was all so romantic. For a short while, Peter Murdoch had everything he had ever hoped for. An advisor who inspired him, a best friend who challenged and excited him, and a body that was stunningly cooperative. So, Peter was in love too. Feeling all the feelings. So then why did he go ghost? Nobody fucking knows. Nobody knows. Anyways, I was talking about how Alice didn't say everything. Now I'm just confused because Peter tells this story in the succession that he was falling in love with her. He got sick from his disease. Grimes published his paper, and then Peter accidentally killed him. And then Alice is going to hell. But that doesn't make sense because Alice decided that she was going to hell, and before that, Peter had pulled away. So what are you talking about? You're feeling the feelings of love, but you're ghosting her. Maybe I have the time mixed up, but I need answers. Miss Kwong, we need to talk. The fact remains, Peter raised his voice, spoke right over her. I can get this paradox to work on you. I'm absolutely certain I can make it work. I have almost no certainty about the two of us. So that's just basic decision theory law. Maximum expected outcome. Shut up. It's just maths. I'm sorry if you don't like it. But you can't die here, she swallowed. Not when I've just... There was something wild, desperate in Peter's eyes. When you just what? What did she want to say? Alice didn't know. She didn't have the words for this pit of feeling, dark and gnawing and delirious. She wanted to hurl herself into this unknown, wanted an intimacy she couldn't describe. She wanted him alive, near, beside her. The words that came to mind were clumsy and insufficient, but they were all she had. When we've just learned not to hate each other. Something closed in Peter's face. And then he decided for the both of them and got her out of there. Shout out to Peter for saving her life. Shout out to Alice for doing her best. But like when we've just learned not to hate each other. Okay. What's next? Shall we move on? Let's move on. Here. This is the themes. Something that I really loved about the book is the themes. Let's talk about it. So, from what I understood, some of the main themes in this book is the things that makes life worth living and that the abuse is never worth it. I'm praying that that's the theme. I mean, I think Alice, learns that by the end of the book. I think. I mean, you were there when I told you about what Elspeth said and how Alice had forgot everything about Grimes. Not everything, but most of the things about Grimes. And so I can't even really say if she learned her lesson, that the abuse is never worth it. That even if it were to make her great, it wasn't, It was just him taking advantage of her. I don't know. Nobody knows. But that's the message. And what makes life worth living? Beautiful, amazing, incredible. And I think her being in hell throughout this story, her learning that through hell and being deprived of all of the beautiful things of life, when before that, when she was on earth, she was depriving herself of all the beautiful things of being alive, eating real meals, watching TV just to watch TV, rock climbing, being with people. She grinded herself down into just a mind, and she was suffering for it because she wanted to be good for Professor Grimes. Meanwhile, Professor Grimes was living his best carnalistic lifestyle. But do you know what I mean? Like, hell is a place where everything is dead, where nothing seems worth it. Everybody's trying for what they feel like is a fruitless cost. And some could say that it could be the same for the living, but I would say that it's different, I would say here you have the chance to live, and there you're just trying to make it to the next spot. And that's the thing, like Alice was living like she was in hell when she's on the green earth. And she didn't have to. And I feel like she learned that from being in hell, that she's going to take a break. She's going to listen to her body. She's going to enjoy the fresh air. I hope. I think. I'm sure. Yes. I believe in Alice. I believe in her. Okay? Even though I didn't like her that much, I believe in her. This one. Let's talk about... Yay! We get to talk about the crib case! This... I'm not going to actually let you read it. This is about Magnolia Kripke. Let's talk about it. Okay. So, Peter's dead. Sad. So sad. So sad. Alice is like, oh, I can't die. I just want to die. But I can't because Peter wanted me to live. And so I guess I'm just going to keep on kicking. And so she goes on. And she's decided that, yeah, revenge. It's time to take out the crib case, which I felt like was a kind of silly decision because, girl, what are you doing? This whole time, the crib case have been like hyped up in this book, talking about they're the big baddies of the hell. They've been killing everybody. They're hunters. They're a lion. You're a mouse. Yada, yada, yada. But Alice is like, I don't care. They're going down. I'm not a wartime magician, but I'm finna make some shake. So she starts putting together some pentagrams. She gets the high ground. She sees the crib case coming. She kills a cat, actually. That makes her feel good. She eats. That makes her feel great. She snorts some chalk. She gets some armor. And she's ready for battle. She does the pentagrams. She heads uphill. And then the crib case come. Magnolia, Nick, and their son. I forgot his name. They're all in bony armor. Nick stays at the bottom. Magnolia and the kid start going up the hill towards Alice. The kid runs up first, and they're at a standstill. Magnolia's looking at her. She's looking at her. She's thinking, okay, how can I leverage this child, Theo? We're going to call him Theo. But then Magnolia pops her arm out of her socket and starts whipping her with it. She starts beating her with her severed arm, which is what the sticky note says. And it's just so silly, goofy. And maybe the hardest I laughed during the whole book. Let me find the scene for you. Magnolia appeared atop the hill. You, Alice panted, are a very bad parent. She wondered why Magnolia did not attack. Then it occurred to her she might use Theophrastus as a hostage. The child stood between them. Perhaps Magnolia was afraid Alice would hurt the child. Alice was pondering how best to make this threat when Magnolia grasped for her own left shoulder and popped her arm clean off. Alice gawped. Magnolia whipped her skeletal arm at Alice's face. Cold bones smacked Alice across the cheek and jaw, rattling her teeth. Magnolia struck again, and this time the force of it sent Alice sprawling. Theo wriggled free, shrieking and clapping. Magnolia advanced, swinging her dead, withered arm like it was some medieval ball and chain. Alice scrambled to her feet. She felt a surge of indignant fury, the ridiculousness of it all. Peter had not died in the desert, so she'd be smacked around by someone's detached arm. Hilarious stuff. Hilarious stuff. Just comedy gold. That's gonna fall again, but it doesn't matter. I just had to share that with you. I hope you liked it. As much as I did. Okay, let's get one of these off the board. Peter says the darndest things. Another grievance I have with Peter. He says some things, and we never get any explanations for it. And you know, at this point, you'd probably be questioning, why the hell do you like Peter so much? He's funner than Alice. Like, and some of the things that he says aren't wrong, okay? It's not a lie, but like, and if she hadn't heard it, it wouldn't have even been that serious. But no, because like, it would have been serious because apparently reputation is really, really big in their circles. And Peter talking crap didn't really do good for her. Let's talk about it. You know, this is making me really embarrassed to be a Peter defender. I won't lie. And you know what? Maybe that's just something I have to address with myself. Okay, maybe I can't be a Peter defender anymore. Okay. Horrible thing Peter's saying right now. We don't like it. It's gross, low key. High key. It's gross. What about the girl? Asked his guest. Alice would always remember how easily the words slid out of Peter's mouth. They were words you said to create an effect, words constructed to influence your interlocutor. Then they were words you really believed, had believed all along, words just waiting for the right prod to spill. Oh, her? Said Peter. No, I wouldn't say she has a problem. What do you mean? I mean, she's like a bird, said Murdoch, hopping where the seat is, eating right out of his hand. Burrowing in for warmth, said his guest. Warmth, Peter drawled, the nastiest sound Alice had ever heard Peter make. There was the sound of fists against palms, some unquestionably vulgar gesture. They both laughed. I can only imagine the gesture that we're talking about. Burrowing in for warmth. Ew, yucky, yucky, ew, Peter, gross. Next thing he says. So, this is after Alice was sexually assaulted by Peter. Not Peter, by Grimes. And she's looking for Peter. She's thinking, okay, if there's anybody I could talk to, it has to be Peter. I need one person to know that it's not what other people think it is. And mind you, Peter saw them that night before Alice pushed him away. So nobody knows what he was thinking when he saw that. Nobody. Alice is talking to Belinda, and she's asking for Peter. Do you know when Murdoch's coming in today? Alice asked her. Peter? Belinda shrugged. Don't know. Think he's gone nocturnal. Why? What's the matter? No, it's stupid. There's just something about this paper, and I don't want to bother Grimes. Right, Grimes. Belinda had an odd expression on her face. You know, he did say something. Peter did. Alice felt cold all over. What'd he say? Oh, nothing much. Belinda's mouth worked, for no sound came out. She had the look of someone deciding how to mince her words, to hint at an accusation without actually making one. He just mentioned you and Professor Grimes were getting close. He said that? Something about a late night and how you're a teacher's pet? Alice felt the ground plummeting from under her feet. You do know that's against the rules, right? Belinda's eyes narrowed. You have to disclose things like that. I don't need to keep reading for you to know that, Peter said what he said. And it's just awful, horrible timing. And nobody gets an explanation. Nobody, nothing. I do believe this is the time Alice does tell him before they die, which is awesome. That's great. But, then he dies. Anyways, let's move on, shall we? You. Wow. Alice's internalized misogyny. It's sick and it's twisted and it's awful to read about. It's clear from the way that she speaks about women and feminism. Let's talk about it. Still, there was a general consensus among the women of Alice's cohort that feminism was an embarrassing fad, a bygone fever of the 70s. Alice certainly wanted nothing to do with it. She was not interested in reading Kristeva or Irigaray and comparing everything to a phallus, in altering language to take the his out of history. She couldn't stand those screeching activists who believed the only politically just thing was to become a lesbian. Burning bras, trashing dolls, the constant invocation of the scary word discrimination. It was also embarrassing. It felt less like a revolution than a tantrum. It seemed the best way to prove women were not inferior was just to not be inferior. How hard could that be? In college, Alice had shared several classes with a girl named Lacey Cudworth, who regularly burst into tears when she felt her classmates argued in a very male way with her, or insinuated that women were not good logicians. Occasionally, Lacey turned to Alice for solidarity, and Alice rebuffed these overtures. Do not come to me, she thought. We are not alike. She thought Lacey gave women a bad name, that her complaints justified everything men believed about women, and that Lacey was focusing her energies on the wrong issues besides. Of course, the department were run by stodgy old men with wandering eyes who thought they were good for little more than producing babies. Those men would be dead and buried soon enough. Meanwhile, wasn't the work fun? But Alice was not prepared for how astonishingly, indeed, comically bad it could be. In her undergraduate days, she'd been shielded from the worst of it by a kind advisor, and the fact that, as an undergraduate, she was too insignificant for the big bad wolves to care about. So she was shocked when she arrived at Cambridge to discover that, yes, indeed, tenured professors could ask her in company when she intended to get pregnant, hopefully not during her PhD, but ideally before she turned 30 and her womb shriveled. Whether she'd started dating in another department yet, this would increase her chances of getting a spousal hire in case she herself could not find a job, and whether she would consider coming to work in a shorter skirt. This would raise morale among the male postgraduates. It was enough to drive anyone to quit. Certainly it turned most women at Cambridge bitter. The beautiful Belinda, so keenly aware of her charms, quickly traded her silk blouses for men's Oxford shirts, though this did not work, and the boys began calling her Axiothea in jest. Katie, a junior faculty member whom Alice sometimes met for coffee, kept her hair shorn close to her scalp. Though this backfired as rumors circulated she was a lesbian, Ada and Gerdeline simply left the apartment and the field for all Alice knew. The moment they were married and never returned. Alice, however, was still convinced by the impossible mean, the idea that there might exist some perfect line between femininity and subjugation, wherein if she could only wear clothes that were both perfectly attractive and perfectly modest, she could both enjoy the attention that being a woman in the department got her, while also commanding respect as a scholar. Chances this mean existed were vanishingly small, but still, Alice clung to this hope. The whole endeavor of graduate study was clinging to vanishingly small hopes. If anyone asked Alice why she had never reported Professor Grimes for any of the things he'd said to her or done to her, she would have explained that there was nothing to report, because it was her fault. It was her fault because when she heard that Professor Grimes had trouble keeping his hands to himself when female students were around, she was excited by it. Because when she heard that he liked ballerinas and skinny girls, she held her hair up in a bun and wondered if she would pass. She desperately wanted to tread the line between beautiful and sexy and untouchable, and so that means that she deserved it, that it was her fault. Boo, tomato, 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 the worst take of the century. Like, and she goes to, after she is sexually assaulted by Professor Grimes, because she figured out that she didn't like that shit. The professor, the advisor that she goes to, is not help at all, because she knows that Alice is anti-feminist and that she doesn't respect her at all. And so it's like the worst cat fight you ever seen in your life. It's not even a cat fight though. It's just her being unhelpful, Alice being a unlucky audience to her grievances about girls like Alice who hate women like Helen. And she gets no help. And then she wants to go see Peter, but Peter is also no help. And so it's awful. Awful all around the board. I just, I pray that Alice realizes there's no line. There's no mean that you can tread. They're always going to see you. Men like that will always see you as an object to touch on more than the intelligent, beautiful creature that you are. Sad stuff. Let's move on, shall we? Let's talk about this one. Archimedes, the kitty cat. I'm just going to tell you about Archimedes. He's the department cat, a cute little thing who joins them on their adventure. They find him, they run into him during the beginning of their adventure, and he's tagging along. He's sitting on shoulders. He comes in clutch a couple times. Let me find it for you. Archimedes helps Elspeth find out that Peter and Alice were trying to trap her in a liar paradox. And he also helps Alice when she's fighting the creep gaze. Let me paint a picture for you. Magnolia and her child, stuck in a xeno trap. They can't move. Looking mad as hell. Nick Kripke, he's running up the hill towards Alice. They're at the top. They're kind of scrambling. She's putting the pentagram down so that she can exchange his body. She can exchange his soul into Professor Grimes' body. It's a reconfiguration of his face using his guts. And it's a mess. And it's torture for a soul to be put back into a body that's not theirs. She's doing all the things. Nick is choking her. And then in comes the cat jumping on his face, scratching. And then Nick has to pull the cat off by his scruff. Alice finishes the pentagram. She bodies Nick. They end up over the cliff and into the leaf. Nick is done for after that, okay? And shout out to my guy, Archimedes. Coming in clutch both times. Anyways, let's move on. Which one should we do? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's end out on a good note. So this, Peter having no character development. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, we're just gonna put them both here. Peter being in love with Alice the whole time. What? How can this be? Nobody knows. Okay. Alice and Elspeth. You know when I told you how they had that conversation at the end where she was giving her the pep talk about, oh, you don't have to think about him at all. We weren't special for it. We were just there. Yada, yada, yada. Where's Peter? She's like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, that's a shame. He was in love with you, you know? And Alice was just like, what? No. You met us when we were arguing. It was even easier to tell then. Of course he was in love with you. And when I read that, I'm thinking, of course he was in love with her. Why wouldn't he be in love with her? But why should I take the word of Elspeth? What the heck does she know? She knew them for 10% of the book. Okay? Like, at the same time. She was here. She was there. And that's it. 5, that makes 10. What does she know about their relationship? Okay? I know more. But I also still know nothing because we don't know that much about Peter. So who's to freaking say? He said that he was in love with her in his little, when we were covering his story. Well, what's up with the ghosting? Why didn't he just tell her the truth? And that brings me back to Peter having no character development. Peter, surprise, surprise, spoiler alert, Alice gets to King Yama's palace, okay, with Elspeth's help. They find the diathela, which is a true contradiction that allows her to have audience with King Yama and barter for her release or whatever she wants. So she goes to King Yama's palace. She's like, hey, I need an audience. And I need to talk to Grimes. He says, boom, Grimes is here. Grimes is talking all this shit. Like, oh, Alice, yes, I knew you would come. Alice, I planted little seeds in your brain over on the Dream Bridge. I knew you would come. Alice, where's Peter? He didn't even ask about where's Peter, though, actually. He didn't give a shit. Peter died. And she's like, oh, Peter's dead. And he's like, oh, well, he's not here, so I figured. Asshole. And he's like, oh, come with me. We'll scour and do all the learning of hell. And then when our minds are satisfied, that's when we'll leave. And yada, yada, yada. And she's like, oh, you've lost it. I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to stay here. Anyways, I was going to force you into your dead body and force you to do everything that I needed before I killed you off again. And he's like, oh. And then she does the spell exchange that Peter wrote in his notes for Grimes' soul for Peter. And then boom, Peter's back. And they kiss. And they're all like, sorry. And then they walk up the stairs together back into the overworld. No conversation. They don't talk. It's a long ass walk up. She just looks at hell and thinks about all the things, thinks about how this was crazy. Hell yeah. And they get half their lifespans back, which is great for them. Gosh. So yeah, Peter was my favorite character. Which honestly though, it sounds crazy to say because of how much I complained about him. Maybe Elspeth is my favorite character. She was the GOAT. Now, you watched this video. I did a lot of reading to you. I didn't tell you everything that happened in this book. And if what I said interests you, I think you should read it because the other scenes are worthwhile. They are fun to read. I had a great time complaining about it with you. And if you read the book, tell me about what you thought of it. If you didn't, tell me if you would, if you liked it. This was cute, guys. Like, I don't have anything else to say to you. I'm glad you stuck around this long. I did a whole lot of yapping. Before you go, there's something on paradoxes that I need to read to you. The reason why paradoxes trouble us is not because their conclusions are true. The donkey does not starve. The world does not consist of unending staircases. Of course, Achilles could outrun a turtle. Of course, the arrow hits its mark. Of course, the heap runs out. The principle we must accept if we want to go on with our lives is that no paradox makes the world stop functioning as it should. The laws of the universe get their say. Things always snap back to how they should be, and a paradox always eventually runs out its charge. The only reason why paradoxes perpetuate for as long as they do is because we let them. No. The reason paradoxes trouble us is because their absurd conclusions make us rethink all of our premises. A paradox is like a staircase, in which each step leads inexorably to the destination. But you get to the top, and the destination is impossible. You've stepped off into empty air, so one of the steps must be folly, because the conclusion must necessarily be false, because we cannot live in a world where logic does not work. One of our premises must necessarily be flawed. This is the source of our unease. A paradox means that somewhere along the path, we have gotten something deeply, terribly wrong. I say this to say, Alice is living a paradox. Literally, like, it's her life. Like, she lives thinking that she owes everything to Professor Grimes. She lives thinking that she deserves this, that this is all for her good, and that if it's not working for her, then there's something wrong with her. A, Alice Law studies under Professor Grimes. B, Alice is a great magician. C, Alice is a great magician because Professor Grimes is her professor. But it's not true. It's a lie. Something is deeply, deeply wrong. And is that all of our lives? I guess not all of our lives, but that is the thing. Like, tell me that's not the thing. Like, tell me that's not the message I was supposed to receive from you. Leave a like if you enjoyed. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Kisses.